Hello, folks. Welcome to Humanity Now podcast. Today's guest is Matt Holten. Matt Holten is the co-founder of Moneyless Society here in the United States, and he's the author of a soon-to-be published book called Moneyless Society. How are you today, Matt?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Great, no problem. Can you please start off by telling the audience a bit about yourself?
Sure. So, originally, I founded or I did, well, I created a website, back in 2013 called moneylesssociety.com. And that was after I had discovered like the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement. And, I was kind of, just really disheveled with the capitalist system and having to work for a living. I was an insurance agent at the time and I hated my job. I was drinking heavily and just smoking a lot of pot and just numbing out and things like that on a regular basis. And I just kind of wanted to find an alternative to the current capitalist system. And when I saw Zeitgeist Addendum, I just really, really connected with that movie, and I was like, "Man, this is the solution right here." And I was kind of disappointed though, because the more I looked into it, the more that I found that nobody was actually like really actively living in communities, especially like that were kind of oriented and focused towards building those systems and creating those types of structures. I mean, the Zeitgeist movement definitely had a large following, and the Venus Project, they got a lot of exposure from that film and everything. But I physically wanted to go and join some community, and I especially wanted that community to kind of be focused on developing technology and sustainability and really moving towards these ideals. And I was just kind of disappointed to find that really wasn't a community like that was really highly aligned with those things, especially in the U.S. There might be a couple in other countries that are somewhat reasonably aligned with those, although they seem kind of low tech. A lot of the times they don't really emphasize, developing technology a lot. However, there's one, I believe in Peru called Katagaya now, but it's Peru. It's not in the United States also. And it's also a very small budding community kind of out in the middle of the rainforest. So it didn't really work for me. I had have a daughter also in the United States. So I didn't really want to move to another country far, far away. So I kind of just started exploring the idea and seeing what was out there. To me, the name Moneyless Society was pretty in line with the concepts that they were talking about, and I was surprised that nobody had, gotten the website at that point. So I was like, okay, I'll do this website and create a little thing on WordPress and start just kind of cataloging my findings of similar movements and organizations and things like that, and what they were doing, what they were working towards, and really just kind of getting that information out there for other people to see. And I also had the intention of trying to form some sort of community like that myself in the long term. So fast forward like 7 or 8 years, not much had really happened with the website. And I started a Facebook page around the same time. It was like 2013, maybe early 2014, something like that. And didn't really do a heck of a lot with it. I maybe wrote like a few dozen articles over the course of several years. It's just kind of noodling around with it a lot for the most part. But as I started to compile more information, I was like, it'd be really cool to kind of write a book about this stuff. Just kind of everything I'm finding, because the Zeitgeist movement and the film that Peter Joseph made, it had covered, it had covered the Venus Project, but it didn't really cover a lot of the other movements and organizations that were out there that were kind of similarly aligned, that were also working towards these goals. And it also it didn't really have much of an open discussion about the idea in general. That was pretty focused on like the resource-based economic model that, Jacques Fresco, and the whole Venus Project were adopting and promoting. But I had questions. I was like, well, how is this different from communism or socialism? And is there anything out there that's similar to this? And, what kind of systems and structures exist now, that could help us transition to these sorts of things? And so I had a lot of questions that I, ended up kind of finding some answers to over time. And I just kind of wanted to explore those answers and have a good discussion about those things, with the general public, and, meet like-minded people, or at least, network with them online and whatnot. So that was kind of the basis of, the Moneyless Society idea and organization overall, was just kind of have more of an open discussion about this stuff, and really kind of just be welcoming and open-minded to all the ideas that are out there regarding the subject, and not be very, rigid and compartmentalized with it. I just kind of just wanted to get the idea out there and say, hey, what do you got? Show it to us. We're willing to look at everything, at this point. And if we like it, great. If not, then we can talk about it and discuss the differences, and what's not so great, and things like that. So in 2020, I actually got really fed up. I was doing real estate at the time, and I just ended up just getting really just disenfranchised with trying to, market and sell myself at every step of the way. I was working just long, massive hours, and I didn't really have a lot of time for family or my book or these passions and everything that I was working on. So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to get out of real estate, and I'm going to start working on this book full time, and I'm going to start posting on Facebook full time, and I'm going to really just try to grow this movement, because this is what I want to do. It's very important to me. And I just kind of, at that point, I was just really wasn't going to take no for an answer. And lo and behold, COVID happened just a couple months. It was like I started doing that like right at the turn of 2020, almost like right on the new year of 2020. And then within about 2.5 months, the economy shut down for pretty much from COVID. And it was the perfect opportunity to really start focusing on my book and really start focusing on this movement. And I ended up getting unemployment for the first time in my life, which was just, a major help with everything. And the movement, the Facebook page started gaining popularity. I started kind of noticing what worked and what didn't. And memes tended to work the best to gain traction, and just get like the most likes and shares, and exposure to the ideas and things like that. So it kind of became a meme page at that point. And I kind of noodled around with the website some more, but my main focus really since 2017 was writing this book. And then in 2020 also, I mean, well, it started in 2020. That was really my main focus. But, I started the book in 2017. And then in 2020, just kind of went really all out with it, posting on the Facebook page, and and really focusing on the book and trying to develop that. So, fast forward another like 8 or 10 months, and the Facebook page is starting to get some pretty good traction. A gal named Amanda came on board and really liked the idea, and so she ended up taking care of a lot of the kind of back end stuff. Handling other volunteers and things that wanted to come. She also took over posting all the memes on Facebook from that point. She handles a lot of the emails still, the messages, and on and on and on. Amanda does so much with Moneyless Society. There's no way I could do it all on my own, and probably no way I could even just do what she does, because she's just such a workhorse and so dedicated to this. So, immense thank you to Amanda and everything that she does. And then we decided to start a podcast on top of that all, with another gentleman named Zachary Marlowe, who I got in touch with because he was just an excellent communicator, and I felt was a true visionary, and was able to kind of communicate these messages really well. So I was like, hey, let's start a podcast and see where it goes from there. So we've been doing the podcast. We're now in our second season. That's the Moneyless Society podcast. And the Facebook page, we're kind of revamping it to get the message out there a little bit better, kind of clarify, what it is that we're doing a little bit more. And finally, 5 years after I started writing this book, it's completed pretty much. Literally just the other day, I got the final edits back from the copy editor, went over those and approved those, sent them back to the main editor that I'm working with. Her name is Karin. She's a really sharp lady, and she took this thing and just Originally it sounded more of like a rant from a high school dropout, which actually I was. The last grade I completed on my own was 8th grade, believe it or not. And then I got my GED after running away from home. My mother died when I was in 9th grade. I believe I was 15. So the everything around there is kind of a blur sometimes. But yeah, so I ended up actually dropping out of school, and so it was kind of an education in writing for me as well, because a lot of it wasn't very structured. I actually had, I struggled a lot with writing this book, just because I don't really have a very good history as far as like English composition goes. I never took a college English class. The last English class, like I said, I completed was in 8th grade. And my mom was actually homeschooling me in 9th grade when she died. So my dad just basically gave me all the homeschooling materials, and I just filled them out for the rest of 9th grade. And and then in 10th grade, just kind of dropped out and got my GED, started taking some college classes in music. But yeah, so it was kind of tough for me writing the book, honestly. And I was really lucky to find a really good editor that helped me organize my thoughts and just really clarify some of this, and just really kind of you know break it to me as hard as it was sometimes, like, you don't need to say this, or this sounds really ranty, and this sounds like a whining teenager here and there. But over the course of 2.5 years of working with this editor, she really kind of took this book and turned it into something that was really solid. And I felt it was just leaps and bounds beyond anything that I could have produced on my own. So immense thank you to Karin also for for really putting that all together, and for now, after so much time and effort, this is all finally coming together. So it's really incredible, just huge accomplishment for me and for both of us and everybody in the movement. I think it's really going to kind of help get the message out there and solidify a lot of the ideas with the movement, as far as why the capitalist system isn't working. And we really relate it to systems thinking too, which is kind of something unique that I haven't seen a lot of other materials do. So hopefully the systems thinking aspect of it, kind of helps people visualize and understand, why why a lot of the stuff in the capitalist system is creating the effects that it is. And as well as we kind of utilize the same sort of thinking and presenting some of those solutions also. So
Yes.
yeah, so hopefully that can be really helpful to people understanding that. Anyway, go ahead, Joel. Sorry.
That's all right. Absolutely. So let's get started with some of the questions, because you've covered a lot of the questions I already had. But let's start with, what is a moneyless society?
Sure. So, moneyless society, it's, honestly kind of an ambiguous term, because it could mean a lot of things. And a lot of people kind of get it conflated with cashless society. So I kind of want to make that distinction first and foremost. It's not a cashless society. Cashless society would be a digital currency of some sort where we're just eliminating cash. That is not what we're talking about at all. We are talking about, eliminating and really obsoleting currency altogether. And what I mean by that is developing systems and structures that work better than the monetary system. So we're actually not just, outlawing money or saying, you can't use money or something like that. We want to create systems and structures and communities and just a way of life in general that works better than money and the banking system. And we have ideas about how to do that. It's not exactly 100% at this point. We're open to suggestions, and it's going to be a lot of experimentation, really, to kind of figure out those systems and structures that work best. We are, highly aligned with, I would say, Jacques Fresco, the Venus Project, the Zeitgeist movement, and the resource-based economic model. Although we don't really take that like as, doctrine. We're kind of open. We're open to suggestions and ideas. And if there's one thing that we kind of really emphasize, it's that it's probably not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. There are general principles that we try to follow, such as cooperation, autonomy, sustainability, utilizing ecology, technology, equal ownership or equal management of resources, more non-hierarchical structures, if you will. to where there's not just one person being a dictator at the top, or just kind of a few people elected by the masses. And another large portion of it is just eliminating the profit incentive, which the profit incentive is really just almost really inextricable from the monetary system as far as I have been able to discern. And if you have money and you have trade and transactions, you're pretty much always going to have the opportunity to make profit. And when you have the opportunity to make profit, you have the incentive to make profit as well, because profit is more money, and with more money you have more freedom. You can buy more stuff, you have more privileges, things like that, just by the nature of having money. So the profit incentive is kind of this, it's one of the main feedback loops that we go over in chapter 3 of the book, called The Problem with Profit. And kind of describe what's going on in this archetype in systems thinking known as success to the successful. And I show in the book just kind of how that relates with essentially successful ideas or people or companies or organizations. When they generate profit, they end up being more and more successful, and the ideas or people or institutions or whatever that don't generate as much profit end up being less and less successful over time. And unfortunately, that has a lot of negative consequences in multiple ways, which we detail in the book. At least briefly. There's no way we could go over all the consequences of that, because there's so many, over such a wide range of ideas and situations. But we try to sum it up pretty well, and I think we do a pretty good job at doing that. But yeah, so the Moneyless Society essentially utilizes these principles of cooperation, sustainability, democratic, equal ownership, control of the means of production. And like I said, it's going to differ exactly how that manifests from one area to another. It's not going to look the same in Alaska as it will in New York City, or in, Africa, or, lots of other places around the world that have different geographical locations and access to different resources, and also different cultures too, because I think, people's cultures and history are definitely something that need to be considered in all this. And we can't just steamroll over, people and their way of life and their ideas and everything. We need to present them with systems and structures that really kind of integrate their beliefs and ideas. But just also provide them with abundance in a sustainable fashion, and eliminate that kind of hierarchical structure, most likely in a lot of cases too. But like I said, it's open for ideas and experimentation. So what we're trying to do is look for patterns that work, and duplicate those patterns across similar situations, in similar areas, geographical areas, or situations, and things like that. So that's kind of the premise behind it, and there's really a lot to be determined in that regard. I'm not proclaiming to have all the answers to it. There are, like we said, we're pretty aligned with like the resource-based economic model, but we're open to interpretations. A lot of people kind of call what we do, very similar to an idealized communist society as well. And I hate to use that term, but I got to distinguish it between, like, like what Marx and everything were talking about, back in the day. They would say, eventually all these ideas of, the transitional system of socialism, and, these kind of state communist ideas, that we have now in like China and Russia, their eventual goal is as a ideal communist society. And to me, from what I've read, an ideal communist society would mimic a lot of these terms and things in a similar fashion. Although there are certain aspects of communism and the political theory that really don't apply to what we're doing, especially like the authoritarian aspect of it. I am not a fan of authoritarianism or having a dictator at the top. I am not a fan of, violent means of like overthrow of the government or things like that. I'm very much a proponent of peaceful, experimentation, construction, cooperation, voluntary contribution, things like that. We're not trying to force or coerce, anybody into doing this. We simply want to work on this on our own volition and develop systems and structures that work better than the monetary system and present them to people. Say, hey, look what we've done. Check this out. Check out this incredible community with, that utilizes these principles of sustainability and ecology, and this democratic means of, control for producing and growing food and things like that. And, like I said, it's going to look different here and there. So, it's a transitional period as well. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. This isn't something that'll be just complete 5 or 10 years from now. It'll be a transitional thing that is really developed over decades or even generations, and it will continue to be refined and improved upon and experimented with for generations to come. And I really feel like this is the direction that a lot of humanity is headed without really even knowing it, because a lot of people are just so fed up with the current monetary system and all its effects, but a lot of people just kind of have a hard time placing their finger on exactly what it is or why or what to do about it. So hence the book and hence these ideas to kind of really clarify a lot of this and moving forward as what these ideas are, what they're not, what we're aligned with, what we're not, and those sorts of things. So kind of
Okay.
hope that sums it up. Kind of went off on a
Yeah,
tangent
it
there,
does.
but
No, it's great. I just want to get into a little bit of the details of how this moneyless society would work. Would we have to barter for everything? Like in a general way, how could we live in a moneyless society?
Sure. So yeah, bartering is really something that we want to obsolete as well. We don't want to have to, you know, trade on a daily basis to get the necessities that we need for daily life. In the book, we detail this as a trade based or a transactional based economy, which is what we're currently living in under capitalism. And what we really want to create is what we call a systemically reciprocal economy or systemic reciprocity. So what that means is instead of trade-based reciprocity or transactional reciprocity, where you have uh, you know reciprocal action taking place, where one person is trading something for another thing and they have to do that basically to procure necessities of everyday life. We want to create an overall system that essentially creates abundance and can take care of everybody just by the workings of that system, right? And no one person has to put in their time or effort or labors to keep it all going. However, everybody's encouraged to do so voluntarily to keep the entire system going. And it's up to each person how much labor and contribution they want to put into that system to keep it all going. So every person can decide where they want to contribute, how they want to contribute, what that looks like, and it'll be different from place to place too. Like I said, there's not going to be a set formula for this that's going to work, 100% of the time, all the time. It's going to be different here and there. What needs to be done and how those things are done and how technology is implemented, what systems are in place. They're gonna differ from here and there, but the general idea is not a trade based or not a bartering economy. It's a systemically reciprocal economy where the entire thing takes care of everybody and people voluntarily contribute to that system when they want to, how they want to, whatever way they want to. And we think that there's enough incentive out there, in the form of positive reinforcement in various ways, just by the benefits, the concrete benefits of having a community or a system that takes care of you, as well as just acknowledgement, from other community members and the relationships that you develop and the knowledge and skills that you develop, and just the satisfaction of knowing that you've contributed to a system that takes care of everybody. There's a lot to be said for those
Yeah.
sort of things, and in the current monetary system, those incentives take a back seat to money, because money is really just kind of this overall incentive to all of that in a lot of cases, and as well as a barrier a lot of the time. So it's very difficult to kind of for a lot of people to get past this monetary incentive. Uh, but those incentives have existed for a long time as far as other things that incentivize people to work and contribute and to help each other and take care of communities and things like that. So we're really kind of going back to the root of what psychologists call operant conditioning or positive reinforcement, and we're just kind of eliminating money as a middleman, to those positive reinforcement mechanisms. So that
Right.
probably answers another one of your questions.
It does.
As
It
far
does.
as how people would get paid, or if they'll get paid, and what incentives exist. So
Right.
I tend to go off on tangents like that. So
No, no, it's
I
perfect.
apologize.
Yeah, no apologies necessary. It's excellent. Yeah, I've got three more questions. The next one would be, what, in a general sense, how could we govern ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's systems and softwares out there that are really being developed at this time that utilize more democratic, like user interfaced means of control. So meaning, like, say you need an item, right? You need something for your kitchen. Let's say it's plates or something like that, or dish soap or things like that. Right now, a lot of us go to the grocery store or we go on Amazon or something like that, right? And we buy that item, and through the price mechanism and production and distribution methods and all this stuff, those items are replenished, and we take them home in our car and put them, in our cupboard or wherever they belong. And a lot of it would actually look pretty similar to that. You could go to the grocery store, and instead of you actually just checking out those goods at a counter, there would be sensors that would automatically sense how much of what goods are being taken or used, consumed. And obviously we would try to educate people to not utilize more than they really need, just keep it under a manageable fashion, because if hoarding is not something that would work if everybody becomes a hoarder in that instance. So it'll take a little bit of education for people to to not hoard, probably sometimes. But that's another transitional thing, and details of which we're working out. But uh, a general idea is technology would replace a lot of the decision making process for that. So if you went on Amazon and bought some, or ordered something, essentially you wouldn't have to buy it at that point. Instead of it going through this whole chain of pricing and selling and all this kind of monetary mechanisms to make everything happen, you would simply have a direct input into the manufacturing process instead. So you say you need plates and glasses or cups and saucers or something. You could even have mechanisms on there to where these things, it gives you a plethora of choices of exactly what it is that you want to order. And then essentially you choose it, and most of these things could be at least largely manufactured automatically through robotics and technology and automation, and even delivered to your home via automation now with autonomous driving and these little robot walking dogs and things like that. So we kind of want to utilize all these sorts of systems, and that's really kind of more for the manufacturing side of it that I'm talking about there, like manufacturing, production, distribution. A lot of consumers would essentially just be, inputting their data directly into the manufacturing system through, through user interfaces like we have now with Amazon. Other larger decisions, as far as like maybe larger community decisions on what sort of building should be built here, or where should we put this road, or what types of what are the best types of food to develop in a certain area. Some of these would be taken care of by mechanisms such as artificial intelligence that could compute large amounts of data and come to decisions that actually work better than what humans choose a lot of the time. There was a recent study, I forget exactly where it was, but they had a group of people, and they asked this group of people to distribute resources between them, on their own, by coming up with a system. And then they did the same thing with AI. And the AI actually came up with a system that distributed the resources equitably better than the humans could themselves. And so, when things like that happen, that tells you that AI really does have the potential to make complex decisions and figure things like that out better than humans have the potential to. And on the other hand, if there's things that humans really do want and need to have a input with, then we have these more direct democratic systems to where, say, you could just pull up an application on your iPhone or iPad or whatever kind of pad or phone it would be at that point, smart device, something, tablet, and you input your data directly. And there are systems out there that can kind of help narrow down lots of different ideas, because sometimes the input on those things just gets overwhelming. There's way too many ideas over way too broad of a span of topics, and so there's algorithms and software out there that are kind of being developed to help narrow down choices between the best choices and similar ideas and things like that. One of them that I mention a lot is like Society Library. I think that could be a very useful tool in the future. Society Library is an organization that is essentially their goal is to document all the viewpoints and essentially just kind of like whatever kind of political beliefs or cultural beliefs or systems and current systems, that thought patterns and things like that that people have. Their goal is to document all of those and provide them in a user-friendly fashion, to where that data can be utilized to help people make decisions in the future. And so things like that are really in their infancy right now, but they're out there and they're being developed. And if we can help utilize technology, user-friendly interfaces to really democratize the means of production and collaboratively solve problems on both a small and large scale. There's a lot of ideas and systems out there that are in their infancy, and some are further along than others, but they exist. They do exist, and they have a lot of potential to help people, and even organizations, communities, governments even would probably be eliminated to a large degree, or obsoleted, I should really say. And the government would really be more just the people. The people at that point would have their direct input through these user interfaces, through technology, through their tablets, things like that. Their decisions would help to be narrowed down by software and algorithms and things like that. And in the long term, like we said, more experimentation, more refinement. It's not going to be perfect at first. It's going to be something that's going to have to be implemented and tried and tested and refined and adjusted. And, over time, these systems a lot of them will probably combine. Another one that we're working with is Magnova. Magnova.space is a platform that's being developed by one of our volunteers named Lavra. And they have done a wonderful job developing this platform so far, and we really want to get it out there and try to get people utilizing it, because the more people utilize and test these things out, the more feedback we get, the more we can adjust them, and start implementing the things that work and eliminating the things that don't work. So like I said, it's large kind of experimentation, and really just adjustment and refining and things like that. But these systems do exist in their infancy, a lot of them. It's just kind of getting them out there and getting people using them more, and refining them in the long term.
Right. And we'll have links to all these websites in the description below, so you can check them out. Matt, I want to ask you about the environmental aspect of all this, because we know that we're in a global, what do they call it, climate crisis. And, we need to repair the earth, and we need to make sure that it's inhabitable for our children and grandchildren and so forth. Can you speak about the environmental aspect, please?
Yeah, honestly, that's one of the main reasons why I do what I do, and why I'm so concerned with all of this, is because, I have a 5-year-old son, and I'm honestly horrified of what the world is going to be like 10, 20, 30 years from now, once the climate, I mean, they're moving from calling it climate change to climate breakdown now, which is honestly a better term for what's happening. The the climate is literally breaking down in ways that are it's not going to support life in the way that we know it and are used to it. And humans are likely going to have to make some major adjustments and adaptations to survive in the long term and the coming decades. And some of probably the very unfortunate effects of climate breakdown that are probably going to inevitably happen at this point. So it's scary. I mean, climate change as far as greenhouse gases is a symptom of what I detail in the book called resource overshoot. Resource overshoot essentially entails humans going beyond the carrying capacity of the planet, and that covers both resources that we're extracting from the environment, as well as places to put our trash and pollution, and that includes greenhouse gases. So we're running out of things that we do need, as such as, like, good soil to plant food, because our agricultural practices are depleting the soil with tilling the soil, and using pesticides and fungicides and all these things that ends up killing a lot of the healthy bacteria in the soil, which actually hold carbon in the soil, and gives it the nutrients and all the life forms that it needs to produce good quality nutritious food. And we're using too much of other things too, like lithium, even sand. Good quality sand that we need, like for concrete and things like that, is one of the things that we could potentially run out of. But it also entails our pollution as well. There's an analogy I use in the book. If our world were a household, our cupboards would be nearly empty and our trash cans would be overflowing at this point. And so we really need to focus on, one, regenerating the environment, because we depend on the environment whether we like it or not. These shortages that we're having with a lot of things now, like the sriracha crop, that's a jalapeno crop failing. Oops, sorry, you don't get sriracha sauce anymore because we don't have any more jalapenos. The same thing is happening with, like, wine and coffee, and we'll see how many other things that it just ends up cascading to and affecting, because it's likely that it's just going to keep getting worse and worse, until we really turn things around. And the main things we have to do are, one, stop using so many resources, which capitalism is really good at, that because of our trade-based economic system generates just massive amounts of activity on an unnecessary daily. Well, it's necessary to keep the capitalist system functioning, but it's really not necessary to sustain life. It's actually kind of counterproductive to sustain life, because we're just blowing through resources at breakneck speed without any regard for the long term. And the other aspect of it is we really need to start regenerating our environment and the resources that we're using. And so that means we need to start putting carbon back into the soil. We need to build the soil health of those microorganisms, and and as well as the people too. We're just really not focused on actually taking care of people, and that's another unsustainable aspect of it, because when people get so down and out and disheveled with the current system, you have things like revolts and revolutions, and just complete economic collapse and system breakdown and things like that. And so I think we're going to start, having more and more pushback in the forms of, climate breakdown, ecological breakdown, societal breakdown and collapse. And the more those things happen, the more solutions like the ones I've presented in the book are just naturally going to come about as viable alternatives and solutions, because people know deep down that the things that we're doing are not sustainable. Like I said, a lot of them aren't exactly sure why or what the solutions are, in turn to those problems. But, I think it's inevitable that a lot of the, breakdown that we're going to see with climate and our environment, unfortunately, over the coming decades, it's probably going to get a lot worse before it gets a lot better. And,
Right.
but unfortunately, the worse it gets, the more solutions like this will tend to be implemented. So that's kind of one of the
Right.
balancing loops that we talk about in the book as well.
Yes, yes. Okay. So my final question is, how can the Moneyless Society help unite humanity?
Hmm. I think that's a great question, and if there's one way I think it could help unite humanity, it's just essentially by presenting these solutions and educating people and getting more and more people on board with these solutions and actually implementing them in their lives, in their communities, and in reality, one of the main concepts behind Moneyless Society is uniting people and cooperating and working together as a team, and not competing with each other, which is essentially the basis of our capitalist system. When we're competing with each other, we're not united. and that's essentially not a very good thing, because like I said earlier, when you're competing, you have to have this trade based and transaction based system, and they all kind of go hand in hand. But if we can actually start cooperating, and working with each other, trusting each other, that if we work together, we can do so much more with a lot less. We can have this just incredibly beautiful, abundant way of life if we'll just get over this competitive mindset and start working together. And that starts with us working with our neighbors, with our families, and then it blossoms from there, hopefully, into working together as communities, in regions, as cities and states, and entire nations working together with one another. Those are really are the principles at the core of a lot of what I write about in the book. And manifesting them has a lot to do with changing that in our own lives, but also changing that on a large scale as well. And the more we're able to implement those cooperative principles, working together, trusting each other that we can create these systems and that they will work, and just doing it, experimenting with it, realizing that we're gonna fail. Failure is inevitable, but we take those failures in stride. We learn from them, and we keep moving forward, and we trust each other, and just have compassion for each other, for our fellow human beings, and that we work together, you know, to actually reverse this, because that's the
Yeah.
only way. That's really the only way it's going to happen, is if we cooperate, unite humanity, like you say, and
Yeah.
work together. So
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Well, this is a good outline of the book, and it'll give people, an understanding of what it's about and encourage them to read it. When is the book coming out?
So probably going to have a soft release, just to kind of try to get it out there in September, but the big release is probably going to be in October at this point, October
Okay.
of 2022, just in
Yep.
case this is years in the future that somebody is watching this.
Hmm.
But yeah, haven't exactly set a specific date yet. Still trying to work on that. It'll probably be towards the end of October, I imagine, because there's still a lot in the works, and it's already almost September now, or at least just a couple weeks away. And
Right.
but yeah, definitely shooting for October, sometime in October at the very latest.
Okay. And you have season one of the podcast up
Hmm.
on YouTube at your Moneyless Society YouTube page, which there is a link to in the description. And anything else you want to plug? The Facebook, the social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're trying to get out there on as many of the social media platforms as we can. Facebook was the original one. We're hovering around a 250,000 like or follows with that one right now. But yeah, we're branching. We've branched out lately to Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Uh, you know, most of us we're all on Twitter too, including the organization itself. But me personally, as well as Amanda and Marlo, and but yeah, so check us out on all the platforms if you want. There's actually a link tree, if Moneyless Society link tree link that has a link to pretty much all of our work, as far as I know. So if you check out, if you just Google Moneyless Society link tree, it should pull up that link tree link that shows all of our work. And hopefully there's something in there that most people can find on the platform that is that they enjoy and are familiar with. And if not, let us know. We'll try to keep expanding and keep getting this message out there. And we're always open for feedback and constructive input and comments and things like that. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Matt, and I appreciate you in the book and your crew. And we look forward to learning, reading the book and learning more from you in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joel. I appreciate you having me on. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to end it now.